Hey everybody, welcome back to another podcast with me, Warren Werbit. Today I am super excited, really excited. I have Mitch Joel on as a guest. Hello, Mitch.
Hey Warren, good to see you.
Always good. I don't know what's shinier, your head or mine.
Probably mine. I don't have good lighting here, but
Okay, perfect. Okay, I'm going to read just a quick one-page bio because I think everyone that's listening on the podcast should know who you are. I'm not that great a reader, but I'll try to do my best. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome a true visionary, a thought leader to the podcast, Mitch Joel. Mitch is the co-founder of Thinkers One, a groundbreaking platform that empowers companies with personalized and bite-sized thought leadership from some of the greatest minds in the world. Over the course of his remarkable career, Mitch has been celebrated as a digital expert, community leader, entrepreneur, investor, passionate speaker. He's also the best-selling author of his book, 6 Pixels of Separation and Control-Alt-Delete, inspiring countless businesses to embrace innovative and transformation. Mitch's career spans nearly 3 decades in the technology and media industry, where he has worn many hats, publishing music magazines, launching a record label, building sales for one of the first search engines, ultimately founding and selling his own global marketing agency to WPP, one of the world's most valuable marketing firms. In his role as president, he led a team of nearly 3,000 people across 25 countries. He's a sought-after keynote speaker, frequently sharing his expertise with organizations like Google, Walmart, Lego, Shopify, Microsoft, and countless others. Since 2005, Mitch has delivered over 40 keynotes a year, and since the pandemic, more than 200 virtual presentations leading brands worldwide. 2 leading brands worldwide. As an advisor and an investor, Mitch is at the forefront of cutting-edge industries, including, important, artificial intelligence, MarTech, blockchain. He's been named to the prestigious lists of Canada's top 40 under 40, Dr. Marshall's Goldsmith's 100 Coaches, and Thinkers 50 Radar Class of 2001. On top of that, Mitch is the host of Groove, the No Treble podcast, a columnist for Harvard Business Review, Inc. magazine, and a frequent contributor to media outlets like Fast Company and Forbes. And here's a fun fact. Mitch's first professional job was interviewing Tommy Lee of Motley Crue, then launching a fascinating career that even included co-founding a successful hard music label. Get ready for an insightful conversation with one of the brightest minds in business transformation, innovation, marketing. Please welcome Mitch Joel. Welcome.
No pressure. Thanks for that, Warren. Yeah.
Oh, there's no pressure. You're good at this. So I'm just super thrilled. And then I had, you're in digital. You're all over the place. You speak to everybody. You know what's going on relatively from what people have to say in all the different forms. So I thought I'd start off with a print question. As someone who's deeply immersed in digital marketing, and you are, how do you see print fitting into the modern marketing mix? And can print still play a significant role in building meaningful customer connections?
Yeah, I mean, the one part of my bio that wasn't illuminated is the fact that I started off in print. I really was somebody who was publishing physical magazines prior to the internet. I am a print nerd, to say the least, meaning I can't walk by a bookstore and not go in. I love, physical notebooks. I love magazines. I love newspapers. I would say that my habits have fundamentally shifted, I would say, in the past 5 years, and even more if you wanted to get into it, very, very recently with my adoption as an iPad mini into my arsenal of tools that I use, which really shifted me away from physical print, which is kind of an interesting discovery that I had, because I really never thought I'd need a tool like that. And that was a big shift. In terms of, the role of print, I don't think we're in a place yet where everything is digital. One of the things I brought out in 6 Pixels of Separation, my first book, is this notion that everything is with, not instead of. And what I mean by that is, just historically in the media, you kind of see the next thing as destroying the next thing. Like AI is going to destroy everything. Blockchain is going to destroy everything. What is going to destroy? I could just keep going back and back and back. And I think what we've learned is there's some type of balance. And in that balance, the diet is somewhat enforced in the sense of you have to make decisions and choices. Do I think that physical beings are making choices away from actual print assets in terms of the information that they gather, collect, share, and whatever? Absolutely. I think it'd be silly to not think otherwise. Do I think that that means that there's a devaluation of print assets? Maybe in terms of actual ownership and consumption, but not in terms of just the physical space. So if we were to talk 10, 15 years ago, I would have said things like, the problem with the digitization of physical spaces, in particular, let's say retail or restaurants, is that the square footage model by which they operate doesn't allow technology to actually hit into the actual square footage. It's just too expensive to do digital screens. Now you fast forward not that long, and it's very hard to not go into a fast food restaurant and see a physical menu. It is a digital screen because they're realizing that, it's beyond the fact that we're putting a screen into a physical square foot. It's the fact that we can now easily transmit the information, change it on the fly. That's going to offset what was traditionally the print job. And so we see that happening. So I think the perilous journey of print is to watch that. If you're watching the print production costs for digital become less than the physical print, it's going to become problematic. So are we seeing that hit places like hang tags, or when you walk into a retail store, the actual physical price per product? We're starting to see that. I mean, we are starting to see that because the cost of digital is heading towards zero. And that's going to be the trouble for print. Does that mean that I'm not going to buy you a Valentine's Day card? Lauren, we were doing e-greetings for a bit, but I think we're starting to see a value in what we call the souvenir or the token of things. Does that mean that as I read a book on a Kindle, let's say, that I don't then want to buy the book or pass it to someone as a gift, or even keep it for my office or on a bookshelf somewhere as some sort of display? Not necessarily, no. And does that mean potentially that as we move away from what we've seen as a traditional print model, that it makes print more valuable? Potentially. So we're starting to see things where, I love the magazine space. You'll see these one-offs. You're a big music fan, you're a big fishing fan. So, when there's the Grateful Dead story in a thick magazine that's $20, you're not just thinking, that would be interesting to read. It feels like some type of souvenir that you might even, bag and board, as we do in the comic book space. But, we are seeing it. We can't deny it. I mean, I'm a comic book collector. Every Wednesday's new comic book day. The production run is going less and less, which again, it means that either there's less demand, but it could also mean that you're increasing collectibility of it. And so I think it's in that nuance. And by the way, I think the comic book industry is a great place for people in print to look at, to see how they've both embraced digital and staved off the collapse of it.
Oh, for sure. Well, when you touch on that and you touch on retail, I think about like IKEA just stopped their magazine, although they do have them in store. They stopped mailing them. Neiman Marcus a few years ago stopped their catalog, and when they did that, they watched their sales go down. For me, I mean, I'm as digital, but like when you talk about music or you talk about fishing, I'm upset that Bass Pro stopped mailing out their magazine, because that's what was a great read when you were sitting on like the throne. Right. And you don't have to worry about your phone falling in, because there's also complications on the digital side.
Yeah.
But you could fold the page over. You could remember where you were. I find with some of the digital, you can't go back to where you were when you moved on.
Yeah, I would argue that there's been a level of sophistication and pushing down the technology. So I'll give you, again, if we want to traipse into the iPad mini story, but one of the things I love also, I'm very involved in libraries. I was involved, we both live in the suburb of Westmount. I was the president as a citizen of the Westmount Public Library. And the digital assets that they allow is unbelievable. So like I use Press Reader through the Westmount Public Library, and it's all of these newspapers, all of these magazines. And what's really interesting is that I've seen the technology evolve. So you'll see what looks like the physical page of the newspaper. All the headlines are highlighted. You tap them. It then shows you a readable version of the article. So you're not zooming in and trying to get a view on the paper. It's giving you what you're used to as a digital version. You can highlight it. You can tag it. You can save the article for later. So while it may not be the same as putting it down and coming back to it, there's something about that portability, that access, that having it, that again, from my perspective, really dropped the desire to be the subscriber, to have the physical paper show up. Like that became the burden. And I think that there's a lesson in there. And the lesson is that if the print becomes a burden, I have to store it. I have to hold it. It's taking up physical space. These are the things that become problematic. And so if it's going to take up space, it becomes an equation. Like we start doing calculus of, I would love to have a box of these specialized Grateful Dead or Dave Matthews Band or Motley Crue magazines, because that would be fun and nostalgic to look through at some point. Again, a comic book is a great example of that. You could read it digitally and get a much better experience than the physical copy, but it's, having it in the right grade and the pristine format. It's the art. It's the physical looking of it. So the calculus is it's worth it to take up that physical space in my house versus how many of them do I not collect, but I'm happy to read. So this consumption against holding on to it is a type of thing that I'm not sure the print industry has fully embraced. Like when you are pitching the idea as a print business to the client, are you thinking about what happens after consumption? Because if you can figure out that math, that's where it gets interesting. Is this something worth holding on to? I mean, that is interesting. And again, we are in a world of waste, and people are concerned about their footprint. They are concerned about every week when they're putting out their recycling and their garbage, they're looking at it thinking, do I need all of this stuff? So those are the questions where you can evolve from stuff to actually something I want to own or keep or have. There might be some more value versus just the promotional need to blast and pray.
Yeah, I find personally the stuff that I like, Grateful Dead magazines, all the fishing stuff, that I want to hold in my hand or have in the house, a collector item, a souvenir item, the box. Some people keep all the boxes, their Macs come in or their iPhones come in. And then the stuff that I don't really like or collect, I'm happy to read it on the Kindle or read the newspapers on the fly because I don't need them piling up.
Yeah.
But yeah, bang on, and print actually is changing in a lot of areas, not going away, and then it's expanding in a lot of areas. The packaging, customer experience, and stuff like that goes well.
Yeah, I worry about the people who talk about things like, who say things like, I just like the feel of a physical book. And I get that. I have thousands of books. I totally get it. And I just know that when you step over that threshold to a Kindle or to an iPad mini or an iPad, and you move a lot, meaning you're not in that fixed place where the book sits to the right of you with your pipe and slippers and whatever, that your brain does rewire. So as somebody who, again, I couldn't walk past a magazine store or bookstore and not go in, I'm still like that. The difference now is I usually don't walk out with something. The one area that I don't think is changing quite yet, I think it's a longer path, is again, like the physical note-taking. And yeah, we do have things like Remarkable, and even iPads can have this filter called Paper-like, which is a film you put over the screen, which gives you that feeling of writing. And I think that it is close. And for some people, maybe they were a step ahead of me. I get it because you could highlight, you can then find things. I still think there's something in the physical writing. It's funny, some of these more simplistic tools that print is aligned with, things like taking physical notes or even reading an entire book, whether it's on Kindle or not, I feel is becoming something of a superpower for me, only because I don't think many people do it. And I think that their ability to input information, crystallize it, and do something with it is minimized because they think that they're just consuming a lot, which they probably are. But there's something about time and depth and moment spent. And again, some of the tech is really good and really close. Some of it just, it's a personal thing. It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, well, it's fine. I was going to go to AI a little later on, but now that we're on this, I'll say AI because I just saw yesterday, I think it's Plaud, P-L-A-U-D, a product that you could put on the back of your phone, AI, and it will record everything that you talk, everything you do. And you know what? Actually, in some cases, for someone like me, it's great because I find it really hard to take notes and listen and concentrate at the same time. On my Zooms, I have Read AI, which is amazing, I think, because it gives me not only the transcripts and all the notes, but it's now pulling out the key points. It's pulling out the action items. If you flip the page, it's even giving you coaching notes on how the conversation was, how you spoke, your tone, interpretation, great self-help. But I still even for today, I sat down and pulled out the pen. Maybe because I'm a printer, I like writing on paper.
Yeah, and again, I don't think it's an either or. I think it's an everything is with, not instead of. I think people who were steeped in this, like my line now is you and I are similar in age, like we're the olds. And so we look in a certain way, even though we want to be modern and progressive, as a world before. Like we're still, you and I are still digital immigrants. We're not digital natives. You and I are still people that had a very fixed education system versus now where there's more progressive and different styles of education. So we can look at something like your kid isn't learning proper script or handwriting or even taking notes, and how are you sitting in bed and just looking at a screen? It doesn't make sense to us, but I think part of the challenge with that is it is a bit of the old, meaning we see that as a competitive impediment. But if everyone is doing it, then you're going to just have a different bar set. So it kind of traces back to social media. When social media first took hold, you'll edit that out. When social media first took hold, I was very much in the space of be careful what you say and do online, because anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of public opinion. Where I think I was very wrong is, well, suddenly if everyone's doing it, right? So suddenly if everyone is taking dick pics, it kind of makes the fact that one person is not that big of a deal. I'm not saying it's not a big deal, by the way, but I'm just using it as an extreme example. Absolutely. And so, in the immortal words of whichever rap person said it, it's check yourself. Like I have to constantly check myself and say, I don't necessarily want my kids or other business professionals to be taking notes and buying notebooks and pens and that's my jam. It doesn't have to be your jam. And in a world where everybody is consuming in a similar fashion, I have to check myself more, and I have to realize that maybe the bar is lower. I mean, here I sit in a 1,000-square-foot office that's myself and a business partner who rarely comes. No scrap, he can do what he wants, but I need to come here every day. I do not like work from home, and so I can have a debate with you about the value of return to office and all of these things, but I fully recognize that my frame is very different than somebody who's 22, graduated, studied on their own, kind of met their friends, did things, and now wants to have that flexibility in the work. It's foreign to me. I don't know how you move forward. I don't know how you get professional development. I don't know how you do all these things. But if everyone is doing it, it's going to create a different instance of how we define work. So I have to be open to that other model. And I think print is really similar. It's easy to get legacy. And I think you've seen, and for sure in your business, people who've been so stuck on legacy that they're gone. And then you've seen others who are thinking more progressively and saying, well, perhaps overall my business is going to get smaller. But if I can find specific areas, maybe I can charge more or add more values or more services and figure out within that what a new model of an integrated print can look like. Because look, we can't deny it. Everywhere we look, we see assets of print, but we also can't deny that the cost to do it digitally and then the ability to update it and keep changing it and doing it creates a limitation to the physical print. And so you have to figure out those instances. And by again, if I go back to comic books, I think it's a great example. So every week you'll have, let's say, an issue of The Amazing Spider-Man. They do variants now. And the variants can be just a different cover art. So they get different artists to do different covers. So now suddenly, if you're a nerd, you'll buy all 5. If you're not a nerd, maybe you'll just buy the one you like. They'll then do premium. So they'll do it on a more cardboard stock, or they'll do a foil, or they'll do something, or they'll even do sometimes X-rated ones, which is a different segment, and charge premiums and premiums and premiums. That can work, I think, up until as long as you don't abuse it and go crazy with it. Right. But then they start experimenting with, you'll know the word, I think it's called lenticular, where it's kind of like a moving. Yeah. So then it's like, and as a collector, if you're hearing that within that it's a smaller print run, it becomes more interesting to you. If a comic has a runaway success, they'll do a second printing. So what's interesting in that model is sometimes you'll have third, fourth printings that are worth more than the first printing, because the third printing was very limited in its run. They were just trying to get the last swath of people who didn't buy it. All of these models, I think, are really interesting. The challenge with it is you typically are in a business of mass, especially in print. And if you can't realize that maybe you've gone from mass to niche and figure out the niche and expose it, that might be more problematic.
Yeah, well, it's funny that you say niche, because I'll tell you what I've seen happen in print is we've gone from volumes down to shorter runs. Right. And in the shorter runs, and of course it's gone to a digital printing. Everything's digital today, be the screen or the technology used to print. And now they've come out in the last few years with digital embellishments. So for hot stamping and UV varnishes, etc. And a lot of brands are now making smaller purchases, right? Like the comic book, making it maybe more collectible, making it a little bit exclusive, and then coming out and doing other runs and then doing longer runs. But packaging is a little different in that there's more consumer buying going on right now.
And what happens on, how commoditized is it? So now I'm thinking about those who are printing things like cereal boxes or things for food or.
So packaging in that space is really commoditized. The biggest companies that are producing the cereal boxes like the West Rocks, etc., they own their own paper and their paper mills.
Right.
So it's almost like the manufacturers of the board have the manufacturing of the boxes and the converting set up, and it streamlines it. But so in that case, it's commodity. Book printing too, maybe a little bit commodity. But when you get into the marketing stuff, the specialty stuff, everyone's doing stuff differently. People aren't, Tim Hortons is running millions and millions of boxes for their Timbits because they're selling the same every day. A lot of other companies are doing smaller runs, targeted runs with the ability to change up and go.
And is it the same as fashion where there's also the commoditization in terms of geography? Like we can do this cheaper in Jakarta or something? Are we seeing that too? I know for books, it's like that. Like the biggest problem with books is when a book is delayed, it's because it's on a boat somewhere.
Yeah, so now absolutely overseas is less expensive. Truth is, the materials are probably the same. It's all about the labor. Equipment costs the same for both because it comes out of Germany. They don't care what country they sell it to.
Right.
The digital printing has made things a little quicker because people are doing short runs now. You could have a big order for books needed that you're producing overseas, but you can go and print a small run and have what you need here while it's coming over. So there's different ways to adapt. If we talk about sustainability, which is always interesting because there's people that really are for it, then there's people that greenwash it, then there's people that, they talk about it because they got to talk about it. But to me, if you're into sustainability, then why are you going over there to print to save some money and then, you're giving it back in the boat that crosses the water and who knows what it spews?
Yeah, your carbon offsets, yeah.
We got a lot of people that, don't print. And I laugh because they're mining and they're into Bitcoin and they're into all that other energy use stuff.
For sure.
Tesla. And so it's kind of the whole world I find is a little bit running in their own path, talking about what they believe without mixing the whole together, because there's got to be a balance.
Well, I think what you're saying is kind of the theme of everything is with, not instead of, because you can make arguments for both. And I just think it's whatever suits you emotionally and from your values. And then ultimately, it's usually a lesser than. Like the running joke with electric vehicles is the same. It's like, oh, you think there's like a farm that produces EV batteries? Like, how bad that is for the environment? And I'm like, okay, but it's not refining oil. Like, I get that there's not an exact clean trade-off, but ultimately, it's more about things that fit lifestyle values and things like that. And I think print is one of those things for sure. Like if people actually physically thought about their print consumption, they might be surprised. They might be surprised by how much physical print is. Like, packaging is one of those things where Walmart used to be a client of ours, and they would talk about how much they're taking out of the environment because they're reducing packaging. And you go, yeah, it's amazing that you can actually do that. But it's still a tremendous amount to get that packaging produced, get it onto the product, get it shipped to a store. So it's a great number, and by the way, when they would do that, they would make more money, which is also an interesting point of scale, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I kind of like to sit in the middle and embrace on both sides because there's good and, if you go extreme on either side, you could fight till the end about what it is, and then really you don't go anywhere because even on the sustainable side, the world talks recycle, but there's not a whole lot of recycling going on compared to what we're throwing into the bin.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? So it's kind of like that. I'm just going to flip now. In the book, and your books were great, by the way. Maybe, I have one too, just wanted to catch up. I have one more to write if I want to.
Yeah, it's not hard to lap me. I haven't written one in over 10 years, so it's not hard to lap me for sure.
You know what? Even before the book, you have a podcast.
Yeah, and a blog too.
Tell us about the podcast because, and maybe people listening will believe it or not, but you have one of the longest running business podcasts out there.
Yeah, I would add in the word consistently, meaning I started it over 18 and a half years ago. I publish every Sunday. It's about an hour, a bit longer, depending on the conversation. And I don't do it in seasons, meaning it's 52 original episodes every week. I don't repeat. I don't do best of. I don't skip holidays. So it comes out 52 times a year, and I'm closing in at over 960. I think I did a little ChatGPT game yesterday, and I think I'll hit 1,000 in September of 2025. So we'll see. But yeah, it's a great, I mean, look, it's a very selfish act. I don't know what your experience has been because I know you're new to podcasting.
Okay, hang on. I'm going to stop you. Because it's you. I think the podcasts are amazing. What I think is amazing is you have on those thought-provoking guests, right? You could rattle off all the names, and you do have a couple on a couple times, even though you don't talk about the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. If someone has a new book out or new concept, I definitely want to keep going with them. Yeah.
You're talking real life. You're talking people interaction. You're talking what people are up to. You're talking about the mind. And you almost started talking about mental health and how we work and what we do before mental health even became a concern.
Yeah, I mean, right? Well, that's where I was going is that it is a bit of a head fake because I read a lot. And so when I read a book, the trick with the podcast is I can spend an hour one-on-one with the author who gets to do that. So it's a very selfish act in the sense of, as I'm reading, I'm having thoughts, I'm disagreeing, I'm agreeing, I want to debate. I can then put those thoughts onto paper and have that conversation with the person. So the fact that I publish it and I put out to the world and thousands of people like it every week is lovely, but I would probably do it if I had no listeners, because what it does for me in the recording component of it, even this, when it's not my show, we're going back and forth, I'm thinking differently about how do I feel about print and things like that. So what happens in that is, you're right, not that I have any foresight, it's more like ideas hit the zeitgeist off of that as a medium. So you have intellectual people who are thinking about things like, let's say, empathy at work, or even now, although it's more of a dead subject, but DEI. When I first started hearing about it, it was before George Floyd. People were already talking about things like, how do we get more diversity, equity, and inclusion in work? And so these topics permeate through the podcast, and then you'll go back and say, oh, like Mitch was talking about this 2 years ago. Not really. It took those ideas to be published for them to hit the popularity. What I will afford myself, because I'm not good at being congratulatory to myself at all, it's an issue. I
do like it when people do it. Yeah.
No, it's more that I started off in the late 80s as a journalist before there was an internet, and I spent hours, years, having to listen to audio cassettes of me interviewing rock stars and having to transcribe it, again, all before tools existed, into an article. And that taught me a couple of things. One is it made me very self-aware of my own vocal intonation and how I speak. Ums and uhs and rights, you knows, and to the point now where when I edit people, I want to throttle half of the guests on my show because I can't believe how they do it, but it's not their fault. They just are not as engaged as I am in hearing it and understanding it. So one is, I think it's given me a skill of communication and a training that is now decades long that you could diminish. Oh, Mitch sounds smart, or Mitch speaks well. It's a ton of effort to constantly hear yourself and hear in your voice, in your head, the things you do repetitively. Two is, when you are in the business of rock music journalism, you typically will sit in the lobby of a hotel and be called up like a cattle call, and everyone's got 15 minutes with some celebrity. And everyone's going to ask them the same question. Tell me about the new album, who produced it, talk to me about the tour. And I realized quickly that if I was third or fourth on the dais, they're very bored. And so it became a challenge for me of like, what can I know about them that would engage them in an actual conversation that will then allow us to lubricate the conversation and open it up. Like a modern day understanding of that is a lot of the stuff that Joe Rogan has said recently about his conversation with Donald Trump is in this idea that by spending 3 hours together, there's nowhere to hide. You have to be human and speak intelligently after the first 5-10 minutes. You can't speak in sound bites anymore. The other thing is, as you're having a conversation like that, it gives you different alleyways to ask or provoke different ideas that they may not, they might be a bit, off, not being on the prompt for it. So these are the things you learn. And again, everyone's like, hey, I want to do a podcast. It's like, you can. It's not hard to get Riverside and buy a mic and do this. But the skill of conversation, the skill of making it engaging and interesting is a real art form. And that's why I think that's where I'll give myself some form of credit, but also at the same time, understand the barrier that every time I'm having a conversation, I'm trying to get better and do better. And that's, it's tiring after 18 plus years. It's hard to do.
Listen, first of all, you don't have to give yourself credit. I'm going to give it to you because I have a hard time sitting and just paying attention. And I actually listen. No, I do but I sit and I listen to not all of your podcasts, but I listen to a lot. And really, it's engaging. It's the books that I want to read. Not a big reader, time, whatever, life gets in the way. So it's almost getting like the old version of Cole's notes.
For sure.
I'm getting Mitch notes.
For sure.
And your expertise is you're pulling stuff out of people, right? And you now have, yes, you work hard, but you have the gift of gab that you could get people going. I'm working on that. And, a lot of people talk to me, oh, I love your podcast. You're raw, you're straight, you're authentic. At the same time that I'm just trying to be me, I'm trying to be a little bit more professional. I'm trying to think, how do I make it a little better, but not too much.
Yeah, it's not advice.
Don't change who you are.
Yeah, no, and it's not advice so much as how I would explain it to somebody would be, it's an expert against an expert, not a journalist against an expert, and not somebody who's a fan against somebody they admire. So when I take that, and I think it's been one of the reasons potentially why it doesn't have a more vast audience is if you just pop in, you'd be like, man, like Mitch should shut up more because he's not letting the other guest talk. And that's because we're so used to the interview or elevating the subject versus what I'm trying to do is actually have a conversation. And if you don't acknowledge or recognize the experience and work that I've put in, not just in communications, but in the actual work of running an agency and all the businesses I've been involved with, like I have a perspective. When I sit down with my portfolio manager, it's a real conversation, not about them telling me which businesses work, but even stuff about like my perspective of where technology is at, where valuations are at. I want to be that type of conversation. And so what I would say is similar, like you have an expertise in this industry, you shouldn't be propping up people. You should be having very intelligent and tough conversations because ultimately what's happening is you want people to show their work. So you wrote a book, you did all this stuff, you have all this confirmation bias, we all do. When you show up in a conversation with me, I want you to show your work, and I want you to show it to someone who's not just questioning you to get you or have a gotcha. It's not my show. It's to be in a place where somebody is going to be able to take something from it and think, that helped my life, that helped my business, that changed the way I might see things, or I went in thinking this, and now I'm leaving thinking that. I think those are healthy things that we have pushed away in our world, and in terms of how bifurcated we are, in terms of how politically set we are. There's no room for any of that, and I'm trying to bring that out. It's not easy, but I try. And I think you should do the same with print. It's a provocation.
Yeah, I actually try to do the same just in my life in general. There's so much, I'll just say misery, for lack of better wording right now, right out there in the world, that I could only focus on me and my inner circle. But when I go on the outer circle, I'm hopefully going to bring some value to people. I'm hoping that I could share experiences with people of the mistakes that I made and spent millions of dollars on learning.
Yeah.
And if I could save 1, 2, 3 other people some time in their life of not having to do that, or talk about something I've done that they can then go and do that will help them engage with their family, their kids, their business partners, because we all, I don't know why lately though, I've been thinking like we've all been on this treadmill. And the one good thing from COVID, I mean, there's a lot of bad, but the one good thing from COVID that I liked was the shutdown, the get back in touch with your inner circles, your family dinners, talking, and then, just realizing a little bit more about what's important in life. And that, yes, we're all rushing, but COVID was a reset for the rush, because everything was always the quickest delivery, the quickest this, everybody was instant gratification, and that slowed it all down.
Yeah.
So even today, when I get some customers and if I handle some print, it used to be I need it in 2 days, and now I'm saying, listen, it's a 10-day delivery. We have this, and more people are like, I understand, it's okay.
Yeah. Going back to the misery one, it's something that I've thought a lot about, because it was easy. And I think we had, from that moment of COVID and the lockdowns, just this continuous thing. Even I would say what happened after, the fact that the economy is doing great, everyone's doing great, like it always makes me laugh because it just feels like this motor, this treadmill, we just jumped right back on and didn't actually give it that beat. I think we're seeing some of it in work. I'm not sure fully, but what I would also say is that I didn't want to diminish how I was feeling. I didn't want to diminish that new value. So while I could have been in a place of misery, what I would say is I'm actually someone who's not just optimistic, but I am almost a tech optimist, meaning I think that technology is a positive force in our world. And I say this because it's, technology is like fire. It can either help us warm our homes and cook our food or kill us and burn us to the ground. It's how we use it and think about it that's going to make it powerful. So as I was going through this transformation of COVID and back into work and seeing what the world was like, I realized that I don't have to be miserable. What I can be is I can add in a pinch of more cynicism, that I can look at technology and maybe not be as fully optimistic as I was back in 2000 or 2005, but I can look at it with a hint of cynicism. And I can do that because maybe there's something true in that as we age and as we get more mature and think about things differently, I can look at both sides of an argument more intelligently, not just through either Pollyanna lenses or this ability to think that, I have to be right. I was right about a lot of things. I really was, but I was wrong about an equal amount of things back, when I first started publishing the books and thinking about digital. Age, lockdowns, economies, politics, geographies, life experiences gives us information, and I don't want to debase or devalue that information. And so what I would say is that instead of being miserable, because it would be so easy for me to be miserable, by the way, 90% of the people who sell their marketing agency become a consumer advocate the next day. That's my running joke. Now I'm just more like, I can see it with an eye of cynicism. And by the way, I can communicate that. It's not off brand. It's part of evolution. So that's how I do it. But I would say that you have to be optimistic. I mean, with all of the chaos, if I said to you, like, Warren, choose another time historically that you would rather be alive in. If you didn't say today, I would say you're insane. I mean, ultimately, you're insane. I cannot think of a better time.
1969, 1970.
That's fine.
Reasons,
right,
music.
Right. But again, I would say, but you still have access to all of that music now, right. And you have music. You have the ability, because as you know, I'm a music guy. You have the ability to hear conversations that you could never hear back then. You have abilities to listen to and see bands. Again, the cost of touring has gone up. But I mean, down since in terms of more people touring, more venues to see. You are now connected through a digital network that allows you to speak only to fans. Like I was, as you know, a huge metal nerdy guy. And in my social circle physically here where we live, like there was nobody. There was maybe one other person. Right. Now I can travel somewhere and meet up with a group of people that love the same thing I do. So I would still make the argument that even if you would say that, if we look at it, to maybe steal a turn of phrase from someone like Steven Pinker, there is no better time for us to be alive. And we have to be able to acknowledge that with all the chaos. There's always been chaos, but I can't think of another time I'd rather be alive rather than tomorrow, right? Like if I could choose one other time, it would be the future. It wouldn't be now.
Oh, I'm happy just every day I wake up.
Yeah, well,
when I say the misery, I just mean a lot of people in general are living under a lot of heavy weight and don't know how to process it. I think I'm fortunate, and just some of the things I've gone through, and I've been had the opportunity to work with some people to work on myself and get things done. But it's a lot of work and it's hard work, and then you don't really want to forget it. And then in my case, I'm trying to share with some other people to give them that little bit of comfort. Yeah. Right? Because what we learn from others, and we can't stop learning from others.
Yeah, and nostalgia is a good and bad thing. I mean, we see, print is famous for nostalgia. It helps us. It gives us emotions, but also lamenting that times were better here. You peaked in high school, or it was so much easier when you came out of college and had your first job. Yeah, all of that is true. And it's also true that today you could start a business on Shopify. You could start selling things on Fiverr. You could connect if you're a painter, good luck trying to sell a painting if you lived here where we live. It's like you got to hope the local cafe would let you show it, and maybe on commission you'd get. Maybe. Now you can go on Etsy and sell that painting 50,000 times over to a global audience of people who are interested in it. There are so many alternative ways to generate income, so many different ways to build a business. We used to be like, oh, you're either an entrepreneur or you work for someone. And I'm like, even in entrepreneurship, I would say there's so many different layers. You could be self-employed. You could be a freelancer. You could be on contract, more like an Uber model. So I do look at it and go, yes, with all of that, take a deep breath, step back, and just think about all of the ways in which you can generate that we never had before. It's an incredible time for that.
Oh, listen, the options, even if we talk about print, you talk Shopify, you talk Etsy, you talk Printful, all these companies that are set up where you set up your own page, put up your own product, design your own, and go out and sell it.
Yeah.
Web to print for printers. Everyone's now going on. A lot of people going online for small stuff, business cards, envelopes, little brochures, and you're almost losing a little bit of the human touch in it.
Yeah. And some people don't want, it's funny. I was at an event in Calgary. I was speaking last week and somebody said to me, do you have a card? And I realized I haven't had a card for a decade. And it's not because I probably have binders of business cards that I kept because I just kind of have them. But again, as a tool, maybe we don't need that touch point. Again, that's where it's things like that where I'm always thinking, are we in the right headspace for what we need to do? So when it comes to the business card, I have a business card. Everywhere I go, I have a card. Why? Because I am in the world of print. And if I don't have a card, I feel I'm dissing print at every level because you got to start somewhere. But in having a card, my card is special. I have embellishments on it. I don't have a person who picks up my card that doesn't go, wow. And if they toss it after in the garbage, they're not going to forget the wow factor when they see my face. Sure.
Maybe it could be the shine from the head.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, it's that memorable thing. I do find with the online and all the tech stuff, my brain is a little more fried and things go faster. It doesn't stick the same way, right? We do direct mail. When something comes to your house in an envelope without your name on it, right away it's junk. When your name is on something, you tend to keep it around a little longer.
Yeah, I don't know if this is like the myths we tell ourselves in print or if that's a reality. Like I just think of when I have conversations and it's anecdotal, you probably have the data, the mail in general has just become an unimportant part of my fit. Like when I was younger, so you have to go and get the stuff and stuff was coming and there was that. Now it's almost an avoidance because it's either some type of print bill that I couldn't get e-wise, or it's that stuff, which ultimately it might be interesting, but it's just the value of it and the chain of all the things I'm doing has been diminished. And I'd make the same argument even about business cards. The more that you're connected on, like in that moment, I'm just like, oh, let me just add you on LinkedIn. And I can see when I get on the plane or I'm back at the hotel, so much more information, so much more connection where I feel like the building of a connection, of a network, it happens at a better scale because within that I can say, oh, I noticed on your activity you did this. Have you checked out this? Or you should do that. So again, it's a different thought process. And I always, when I think about business models, whether it's print or others, that's where I want people to think more. It's like where in the value, if it was like number 2 in my day, if it's gone to number 6, I don't think you're going to make it a number 2 again. I think the question is, how do you make it a relevant 6? And so that it's not the thing that's actually pushing it down from a 6 to an 8. These are the things that are hard to do in industries that are more traditional, 100%, just harder to do. So all these bells and whistles, I have all these accents on my card. That's great. I'm usually not even taking the card. I usually say, that's great. It looks great, Warren, fantastic. I'm just going to add you on LinkedIn because I don't. So as we have more of that, which is just the reality of the world, that's where we need to think about the business models. Not how do you get it back to the ranking, but how to keep it relevant, because if you don't, it's going to keep falling. That's always the concern with me, is the backslide, not trying to constantly bring it back. I don't think, just the nature of the world, I just don't think we are going to be at the scale of which we were. With print, I don't think it can be. So again, it's figuring out where is the value chain and how do you keep it interesting for people. And it's hard. It's not, I'll tell you, it's funny, like even with my iPad mini where I'm doing the press readers, I'm seeing the physical magazine and I see the ads too, which again, is a big important part of my life. I like seeing ads. I like seeing that type of communication. I realized in it that yes, so much of it isn't compelling. And it's not to belittle print. I would say the same thing when I was with marketers last week in Calgary, and everyone's talking about ads. So tell me, what was the 2 best Super Bowl ads from last year? And it's like Ghost Town. I'm like, it's a problem. If we're generating X amount of billions of dollars in a GDP based off of advertising and none of us can remember anything, like that's saying something really scary about how many, not just billions of dollars, how many professionals are in the business of print marketing advertising, and all of us can't create something that captures the zeitgeist anymore. Like we don't have that anymore. And I think part of it is we have moved away from that as being part of the core zeitgeist. And so again, now it's how do you keep that relevant to the segment that's there and push it forward? I just don't think it's going to recapture the zeitgeist. And I think that that's a dangerous place for an entrepreneur to be. If they're constantly focusing on that, I don't think that's the win.
I just think there's so much stuff out there, content, call it
Of course.
what you want, that it's like, how many more podcasts are there? How many more how many videos are uploaded on YouTube every day?
Yeah.
500 million hours of it, or
yeah, but look, how many songs are there? How many songs are there? How many?
Oh, yeah,
and by the way, look at it. I always say, look, the best example of like framing for that is look at movies. I have young kids, and we would still like to go to movies. There are no movies to go and see. So before, you could look at, like, go look at what movies came out in 1986, and you'll be like, there was 15 movies in the theater at that moment that I would go see. Now it's one, and that one will hit streaming in 2 weeks also. So just the model changes. So if you're going to admit that there's only one or two, you have to admit that the industry is on the, and by the way, I don't want to get into politics, but if you look at what happened, if you look at those celebrities endorsing and they thought that this was the win in a world where they're not, they're paying attention to the Joe Rogans, they're paying attention to people like that. Right. So, you know, we can talk about how many podcasts there are. There's a lot of podcasts, one, but at the same time, the number one podcast is a show that people spend 3 to 4 hours on per episode, which, by the way, would go on in complete opposite of what you would say to an audience, which would be, hey, we're in the TikTok generation and reels and shorts and stories and people have no attention. Well, apparently they have attention span because they're not only watching Joe Rogan for 4 hours, but they're also binge watching shows for 30, 40 hours a week. So we tend to tell stories that aren't necessarily the whole story. And figuring out where that place is, I could say, yeah, there's so many more podcasts, but just think about podcasts and the fact that podcasts primarily are television shows now, 100%.
Yeah.
And their length is 4x what they used to be. And by the way, when the host talks about products or services, the inclination for the audience to buy it is at a scale we've never seen in what used to be the attention economy, 100%. Because you feel like you're part of that community, right?
So we've gone from watching TV with what were once good commercials to, I'm going way back when it was just different. Although in Canada, we get bad commercials. And, you know, then you went to the PVR where you could record the shows and skip the commercials. And now it's the podcast, listening to Joe and the commercials and being captivated by it even.
Yeah, because Joe and other podcasters know a truism that we knew in advertising, we just ignored, which is the idea that if you can align the product or service with the right host to the right audience, they'll be more inclined to activate. And so one of the filters Rogan and others will use is, do I use this? Now, if he uses this and I'm spending all this time with him, I feel like I'm a part of that community. So I trust him. If this is the back roller he uses, if this is the morning supplement he uses, if this is the underwear he wants to wear, if this is the jiu-jitsu gi he's saying is the best one in the world, I trust in that because he's obviously some form of expert, at least in terms of me wanting to engage with him. So I would say that the beauty of that is in a world where you have so many podcasts, the real opportunity for the marketer or the brand is to find the voices of people who have some type of audience. It can even be a small audience and try to connect to that. This is why we talk about micro influencers. It's why we have marketplaces for influencers. So I don't need 3 major television networks. I could use 50 very small audience driven content creators that are actually interested in what I have to sell, and they will excitedly talk to their audience about it. If you ever watch like these tech review shows, I'm so fascinated by them because I can't tell if the person is a paid shill or if they're genuinely interested. And that's interesting. I mean, obviously you want transparency, you know, but the general sentiment is valuable, which is they're speaking about it quite passionately, and it's nothing I could have ever extracted from a print ad magazine or even from a review in the name, you know, Fast Company or something else. So there's something intrinsically valuable about people talking, and even this, it's like a form of...
Well, I think I think people in general always
Yeah.
appreciate more hearing from someone, because you get to, not only do you hear when you're talking to them, you're looking at them, you see expressions, you
Yeah.
get excited, you see disappointment, you see wow. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I want to jump just to in Control Alt Delete. You talked about the need for business to reboot in response to technological shifts. And I think today more than ever, especially in print, because print's so old, and we have a lot of old people, and we have a lot of young people, and we're really trying to bridge the gap. And the old people are wondering, how do we get young people in? I'm telling the old people, don't talk to the young people because you don't get it, right? And then you scare them. But what do you believe is the most critical aspect of a successful business transformation today of the two?
I don't know if the answer is like, this is what we do and how do we attract new people to it. I believe what's going to happen organically is people are going to look at industries that they can disrupt or can think about in a different way. And when people do that, you start seeing new models. So if I think about book publishing as an example, hybrid has become this thing. And hybrid to me is very curious, because essentially the author is paying a company to handle everything, including the printing of the book, which to me was, oh, you mean self-published, the same thing. But we use this term because there's all these ancillary services to it. It's some marketing, it's some placement in physical stores, it's ways to get you listed on Amazon.com or BarnesandNobles.com or whatever it might be. And it would be difficult for me to sit here and tell you, well, look, book sales are down or people don't read. We had that problem before the internet existed, so that's not the thing. And then I look at things like Book Talk and the fact that TikTok is getting into physical book publishing, and even some of these AI players are talking about publishing differently. Those are the areas we need to look at. We need to look at the areas that say, what would the future look like? And maybe not how do we bring people into the stuff we're doing, but how do we take the stuff that we're doing and allow it to complement the way that these new people are thinking about what the industry is and can do. Those have been traditionally the easiest way for traditional companies to transform. 2000, I started a digital marketing agency very specifically. And I sat down with people you and I both know, love, and trust. And they looked at me like, like, you think that like digital media is going to take over like what we're doing in radio or what we're doing on TV? Like, ha ha. And look, that's where I was 100% right. So I'm okay being 100% right there. But what I saw is those same people allow me to capture enough market share that they started thinking, maybe I should hire one or two digital people. And I'll tell you the scale of which it happened, which is when I sold the business, which is now 10 years ago. At that point, our biggest competitors were in-house marketing teams. You would have more people working on the marketing for one brand than we had in the entirety of our agency. And this was a big signal to me that they started realizing much quicker, not just where the money is, one thing, but it's where the attention is. And again, why I love the marketing industry and why I think it's so germane to your question is the marketing agency business is completely driven by where the attention is, eyeballs. What if print was like that? Like, what if actual printers said, well, actually, where is the attention? If it's not on this thing, you're going to drop in a piece of direct mail. Where is it? And then what does that look like for me? Like, how do I build another division, acquire a company, do something, make it more material? Maybe 1 + 1 can be 3 somewhere. I don't know what that looks like, but it could be. That's where I see the transformation happening, not in the generations. Because what I thought I was going to answer is, I've had Seth Godin on my show countless times. He's a brilliant marketing guy. And you'd always ask Seth, like, so what has to happen in this traditional industry where it's older? And he would just candidly say, they have to die. Not meaning, we have to put them in the coffin, but meaning they have to go, some of them will die, some of them will age out, some of them will retire, some of them, but meaning what has to die is the ideology of it. And we see this across everything in political spectrums too. Your ideology, you have to be, I always think back to like, why did I start the agency? And not in terms of finding the answer, but in terms of any other entrepreneurial endeavor that I think about. And then I realize if I don't have the same intimate like thoughts of what I think the industry needs, it's a commodity. And I don't like the commodity business. And the other thing I really don't like, which I think might be a provocation in the printing industry, is any industry that's also driven by a lot of middlemen. That's very dangerous. Like, that's the first thing digital disrupts, is that. And so if you said to me, like, where would these young people be? I would say look at all the aspects of the print industry that have some form of a middleman, and that's exactly where you're going to see the cracks. That's exactly where you're going to see someone saying, I can bridge that, I can get rid of that, because there's an efficiency with technology that can probably circumvent that.
Yeah, and we have a lot of that happening. There's a lot of people getting cut out as things come together.
Of course, technology does that.
Selling. You still have a lot of print brokers. There's less print brokers because people can go direct. Is it good or bad? It's probably a little bit of both.
But it's good. And also, I would not diminish the concept of it's good enough. So, and again, it's a tough thing to hear, because typically what I would say is you want to be remarkable and outstanding, and you do. But in certain aspects of the work, it just has to be good enough. Like, I never touched HR because we had some employees where at 4:58, they're packing and walking out the door. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it took me a while to realize that if I'm employing people with the attitude that they're going to think like me, the entrepreneur, I'm the problem, not them. And so it's like, are they good enough? Meaning, are they doing the things by which we're paying? Are they excelling? Are they delivering? Do we work well together? Are we getting value? Good enough. That's fine. I don't need everybody to be the entrepreneur.
No, and I was going to say before with COVID, the one thing that came after is like, we have to look at people for their output, not their time put, because our older than us, what was that phrase people used to use? Well, I paid my dues, right? Who came up with that? 5-day work weeks. I like 4-day work weeks. We're on this planet for a short time. We may as well be allowed to enjoy ourselves, not stressed out with the bills we have, and work harder to get more material things. Yeah. Find times, find places to sit back and clear your brain.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, when I think about, you must know Strategic Coach House out of Toronto.
Yeah, right? Dan Sullivan is great.
Dan Sullivan.
Right.
So
Big
I
fan.
met him 25 years ago when I was at the Entrepreneur Organization. And I never did the full course, but the concept of what he had, work harder, work less, make more money, he's blown that business up. And I think every entrepreneur should have that. And simple little things. You go on vacation, no business books, nothing related to
I don't know about that.
But I like the idea of, no business books related to your business, maybe. Yeah. But you could still learn. You're making calls, close the door, no one should interrupt you. If you leave your door open, people line up outside your door, you don't get anything done.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, look,
it's a really crazy world.
Yeah, I mean, my big thing was similar to pay your dues. My big one was, it's nothing personal, it's just business. I'm like, listen. Right. I'm here 8 to 10 hours a day, not playing with my kids, not doing what I love, or I'm doing what I love, but I take it very personally and very seriously. So that also, like these, I think there's a lot of very traditional axioms that got very tired over time. And what I would say is, like, my replacement for pay your dues is not that. My replacement is just professional development. Like, what are you doing to be that much better that when you leave this office and go to a competitor or someone else, that you have a delta? That you're not just, because by the way, like in the world of AI, that's what AI will eat for breakfast, is just the normal repetitive stuff. So you always have to be figuring out how you're deltaing that professional development for sure.
I think, what you just said, AI is just forcing everybody to move a little quicker and stay on the ball. No one's losing their job to AI. You're going to lose your job to someone who knows AI better than you.
Well, I don't know. No, I think you are going to lose your job to AI. I think that will be a reality.
But the general, like when the computer came out, everyone thought they were doomed. There's computers and there's more people working on them. So AI will create other avenues for people to do other things. It's not going to wipe out the entire world of no one will have work.
We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I could go to the mat with you on that one. That I think the danger of AI right now is to assume it's going to act like any other technology and how it's changed society. When we're introducing a concept of some form of superintelligence, and by the way, whether we hit AGI or superintelligence, I don't even care. It's already better than most people. So it's already at that place. So when we say that, I'm not as comfortable making that type of statement as I would be with other technology. This could be the one that makes us, any technology that drops productivity, the cost of productivity down, and this could bring it to zero, could have massive implications for society and the economy. So it's the one where I'm still not sure about, but it's a debate for another day, I'm sure.
I go with what I said, because if I take the other way, it's just way too depressing, scary, and creates more anxiety. And I think there's enough anxiety out there in general. So I encourage people to learn a little bit, be a little comfortable with it. Even the basics of just using ChatGPT to write I had to write something to someone, and I was in a really bad mood, and I was angry about something, and I put it into chat, and it was a beautiful tool because I prompted chat to get the point across, but not to have the anger and the emotion that I had. And it wrote a beautiful little note for me that got the point across in a nice way. Yeah. Right. And I thought, oh my God, I just saved someone wanting to kill me after that one.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
You got to find the benefits of it. So we're on, it's like an hour now, but I can go hours with you because I haven't even touched on anything that I wanted to, like just the future of work and leadership and how it all plays in together. Because I know you're really big on people and stuff. Your personal branding with 6 pixels of separation. You emphasize the power of personal branding. I personally didn't know what was happening, but when I had that first video, Printing's Alive, and everyone was laughing, and I was loving the notoriety and going around and being the video guy. Fast forward 6, 7, 8, 9 years after that, it occurred to me that I was in the process of building a personal brand.
Yeah.
And it's just continued. And, now that I don't have the printing company anymore and I'm still involved in print, I have a name and a reputation. Hopefully most people still like me. But I think more people need to think about their personal brand and how they want to be portrayed or how they portray themselves out there to connect with people.
Yeah.
I think you've done an amazing job.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that when you talk about the access of technology, it's your ability to, in text, images, audio, video, short form, long form, recorded live, be able to project out into the world your thoughts and ideas. And so, what I would say is, in the interest of time, that maybe we could just agree to do a part 2. I'd love to talk and tackle those subjects for sure.
I would love to.
Yeah, we should.
Okay. But before I say my final words and thank everyone, I want you to take a minute and give a little pump for Thinkers One and what you've created there, because I think it is awesome.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. So the idea would be that in any of your meetings or in conferences, you'll go to a conference and you'll see people do public speaking like myself. A whole bunch of thought leaders are out there. Typically, they are not accessible to your everyday meetings. And so what we've done with Thinkers One is we've essentially digitized the relationship so that you can go in and on your credit card, literally book some of the world's best thought leaders to pop into your next meeting or your lunch and learn. And you can access them in 2 ways. One is live, so they'll pop in for like an Ask Me Anything, just hang out with your team. All of the experiences are about 15 minutes long. And the other way is that they'll record a video just for you and your team based off of topics they've predetermined. So again, everything is unique. Everything is created just for you. It's just for your team. And it's just a way to make all these great thought leaders accessible to more things than just the annual conference.
Yeah, it is. I think it's great. So for everyone listening, I'm going to post all that information when the podcast comes out. So you can go check out the website and do all of that. I'm just great conversations. I'm smiling because there's just so much more, but I'm going to take you up on that part 2, maybe 3 and 4. Do me quarterly. We'll do something.
I'll be your co-host. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good with that. I can always take on somebody else. And when I have weeks off, maybe you'll cover.
Yeah, I'll just cover. Exactly.
Right. To everybody who's out there listening, I really, really hope you enjoyed this session. It's not the normal print conversations that I have, but I wanted to bring in somebody special. I wanted to bring in somebody to hopefully give you an opportunity to start thinking a little bit outside the circle that you live in and to see how big the world is. If anybody wants to be on the show, let me know. If you know anyone who should be on the show, if you want to share anything, do let me know. Mitch, once again, thanks so much for your time. Everybody else, you know me, I love print, and I will continue this and to spread the word. Tune in to the next one. Thank you.